Racing games are fast, but what if they were so fast they became almost unplayable? With just 7 days for the 13th Brackeys Game Jam, I wanted to make something fun and unique. So I strapped jet engines to the car and turns out that was a huge mistake. Yeah, this thing is so fast it breaks the game. But how did we get here? Let's go back to day 1 and see how I built this uncontrollable mess. It was the 16th of February and I joined the 13th Brackeys Game Jam. At exactly 7 PM, the dim was revealed. Nothing can go wrong. Well, I wasn't exactly rooting for this, but it's decent. And so I immediately began brainstorming for the ultimate idea, which happened to be a game where you strap jet engines to a car because you're late for something. It could be work or even sending the kids to school. Yeah, driving with jet engines and kids in the car sounds like a horrible idea, but hey, nothing can go wrong, right? Anyways, with the idea in mind, I quickly created a new project in Godot called Brackeys 13. Very creative name, I know. And oh, version control? Who needs that anyways? Let me just... Alright, let's start. Where do I even start? Bam! Car. And if you're seeing a rectangle instead of a stick race car, you might need to get your eyes checked. Anyways, of course this car isn't sentient so it can't move yet, which is why I slapped a script on it to give it some action. And yeah, just like that, we have a dumb rectangle, car that drifts. Next, I decided to fix the... Oh wait, forget about that. Check out this cool catalog of shaders. Let me just... yoink. Guys, look at this cool pixelate shader that I totally wrote from scratch. And no, I'm totally not doing shaders to procrastinate on fixing some bugs right now. With that out of the way, I think it's time to spice up the graphics. So I hopped into a sprite and quickly drew a car. Alright, we now have a better car that drifts instead of some dumb race car, but speaking of drifting, it's boring without some skid marks. So I went ahead and added those along with some stick spoke particles. Now, the game currently sounds like this. And as far as I know, cars don't sound like that. To fix this, I borrowed some sound effects from the internet, chucked them into Audacity, edited the sounds, and finally slapped them into Godot. Alright, the car controller is now basically finished. So I moved on to the main mechanic of the game, which is the ability to strap jet engines on the car. First, I made 9 slots where the player could place the jet engines into, and of course, nothing happens yet. So I quickly wrote a script to highlight the horrid slot and... What? How did that even happen? And guess what? I suck so much at game dev that I spent an eternity trying to figure this out before realizing I was just missing one single line of code. Yeah, I'm kinda dumb. Anyways, without the jet engines, these slots would basically be useless. So I hopped into Sprite and designed some of those. Alright, that was quite a lot of engines, but ladies and gentlemen, there was one final engine. One that should have never existed. Allow me to present to you... Blob. Yeah, Blob's a pretty chill dude, honestly. It totally doesn't add an unimaginable amount of speed. Anyways, with that done, I made some UI for the items. After that, I quickly made it so that you can drag items into the slots. And no, we don't talk about my spaghetti code. If it works, it works. And guess what? It did not work. And it's not in the way I expected it to. So I slapped my keyboard and, well, that somehow fixed all the bugs. Alright, with that done and dusted, I moved on to design some cool wheels for the car. After this, I slapped them into the UI and I realized there wasn't a slot for the wheels. So I just slapped one on top of the car. Now everything works like a charm. Or not. Anyways, that issue was extremely easy to fix and totally did not take me an eternity to debug. Once that's done, I decided to make it so that the wheels and the jet engines actually affect the driving instead of just being some useless decoration. Alright, let's test the capabilities of Blob. Surely nothing can go wrong with a jet engine named Blob, right? Yeah, everything is normal, trust me. Anyways, if my goldfish memory serves me right, racing games are supposed to have tracks. And maybe it's just me, but this does not look like a track. So I went ahead and coded up a tool script that would allow me to create routes by simply modifying a path2D node. Next, I quickly put together a road texture in a sprite and slapped that on. I also created a grass texture so that the background wouldn't look like a boring empty void and the game was looking great. But then out of the blue, reality hit me. Yeah, I basically realized that the game was far from done and about half of the gem has already gone by. So I stopped admiring the visual of the game and quickly got back to work. As you can tell, the route currently just gets abruptly cut off. To fix this, I went ahead and designed a nice little parking lot. Since I didn't want the parking lot to look like an abandoned place, I went ahead and made a bunch of different colored cars to fit it in. Yeah, I probably should have just used shaders for changing the colors, but honestly, I have no idea how that black magic works. Anyways, we now have an actual destination. With that completed, I decided to spice up the gameplay using some dialogues that explains why on earth you're even attaching jet engines to a car in the first place. To do that, I first drew this dialogue box with a random guy in there and tossed that straight into Godot along with some text. But obviously, the dialogue system doesn't just magically work on its own, so I quickly mashed together some code and in no time it was working like a charm. Speaking of working, you know what isn't working right now? The jet engine building system. Well, to be clear, the system is working, but as you can see, the jet engines don't show up in the actual driving scene. To fix that, I just smacked myself in the head with a brick. Where was I? Oh yeah, the brick. I kinda went unconscious just now. Anyways, oh, would you look at that? It just fixed itself. Alright, now I don't know if you've noticed, but you can technically buy an infinite amount of jet engines right now since the code for the coin system is basically non-existent. So I quickly fixed this by slapping some random lines of code in there. At this point, the coin system, building system and whatnot are basically all working. But what is not working is the crashing system. So I hopped into Sprite and drew this little bump icon which I quickly slapped into Godot and we now have bump detection. That's apparently a little broken. Thankfully that wasn't some huge issue and I easily fixed it. Anyways, you know what they always say, what's the use of counting bumps if there's no consequences? Alright, I have no idea if anyone's ever said that, but bumping is supposed to be bad and currently nothing bad happens. So I decided to make it so that bumping is going to cost you coins for repairs. However, there's still one slight issue. You see, right now there's no end screen after each run to display the coins you lost or won, which naturally meant it was time for me to add an end screen. Except procrastination got the better of me and I ended up searching for some sound effects instead. And guess what? I proceeded to spend the next hour or so implementing this instead of making the end screen. Well, Albert Einstein once said, if you don't get randomly distracted, you're not a good game dev. Wait, was Einstein a game dev? Gosh, I just stopped coming up with all these horrible excuses. Anyways, with the sound effects implemented, I quickly got back to the end screen. Oh wait, what's this? Yep, you guessed it, I got distracted again and made a countdown for the race. Alright, that's no catch this time. I finally decided to make the end screen. And since just showing the time and the bump count is boring, I added a tier system that shows how well you drove. Once that's done, I realized that something seemed off. As you can see, the jet engines currently just add speed, which is just boring. So I made the jet engine spit fire using Godot's particle system. Just like that, we now have some extra game juice. Anyways, the core game loop is basically finished now. You can drive, park the car, continue to the next day and repeat. But there's a problem. We can't lose yet. So I quickly made a game over screen and by quickly I mean it. Cause look at this. Yeah, I didn't even bother to change the font of the text or center it. But who cares, at least it works. Or maybe not. And since I set it so that you lose when you lose all your coins, I tested the game over function by repeatedly bumping into the barriers. And sure enough, it didn't work. Yeah, let me just change some stuff and... oh, for fuck's sake, are my debugging skills just that bad? Anyways, I'll just go ahead and edit the code again and... there we go, the beautiful game over screen. Now, the game does have a bunch of sound effects currently, but it's really lacking some music. So I found these two amazing tracks by HeatleyBros and slapped them into the game. I decided on this music for the menu and this for the race. Well, the one I used for the race is literally named Fury Road, so it's literally destined for this. Anyways, with the music settled, I went on to tackle the next big problem. There's only one track right now, and that's boring and repetitive, so I quickly created some new routes. Afterwards, I quickly made a script that randomly picks the route each time you drive. Alright, with that done, I realized that the game had a severe lack of menus. The game over menu looks like a pile of crap and the start menu is basically non-existent, so I went ahead and drew some buttons. Next, I put together a simple start menu and finally made the game over screen look 1000 times better. Now, the game loop is basically completed. You can start the game and lose it. So I decided to add some polish and game juice that just makes the game feel that much better. For instance, the camera zooms out as your speed increases, or some camera shake and particles when you bump into the barrier. Which, yeah, it's kind of broken. Anyways, yeah, I quickly fixed that and everything was working like a charm. Anyways, I then went ahead and made a credit screen because I used a bunch of sound effects and music from others and I'm not looking to get copyrighted. Because I'm too lazy to make stuff look good, I just slapped a giant wall of text in there. At this point, everything was basically done. And it was still pretty early. So I decided to put together some sliders to control the volume of the music and sound effects. And guess what? I spent the next 10 minutes or more struggling to change the style of the slider. I'm just kind of dumb. But well, in the end, I did manage to finally get it done. With that, Too Late to Break was done and dusted. I then went onto the jam page and submitted the game. I just hope nothing goes wrong now, and that the game doesn't have any bugs. Guess what? Nothing can go wrong? More like everything went wrong. The game had a bug. A huge bug. Remember the cute little blob engine? Yeah, it's actually not cute at all and was the fastest of them all. In fact, it added so much speed that the game completely broke. Okay, maybe not completely broke, but basically people were clipping out of the map. And yeah, blob is really expensive and incredibly hard to get, let alone 9 blobs, which yes, somebody did achieve. And yeah, if you clip out, you can basically say goodbye to all your progress and blobs, unless you magically clip back in, which somebody did do. Yeah, the game is really broken. Anyways, let's put the bug out of the way for now because I created a leaderboard for Too Late to Break in my Discord server, and over the next 2 weeks of the jam voting period, a ton of people played the game. In fact, the leaderboard got incredibly competitive. Honestly, it started out pretty normal with times like 13 seconds and well, it slowly decreased to 12 seconds and what the f. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, a stunning 5.9 seconds by Cal. And guess what? The entire leaderboard is now sub 8. You know what's even worse? Me, the developer of the game, got kicked out of his own leaderboard. Yeah, I really gotta get good. But that was not all. Because in those 2 weeks, people got crazy with the game. Yep, the game got modded. Atigon right here removed the damn barriers and got a 1.7 seconds. And another one, 1.8 seconds. And finally, Cookie sealed the deal with a crazy 0.4 seconds. Yeah, I don't even know what's going on anymore. Anyways, the 2 weeks was soon over and it was time for the results. Allow me to present Too Late to Break's final ranking in the 13th Brackeys Game Jam. Yeah, I got 377th place out of 2194 in overall ranking, which is in the top 17.2%, and well, it's the best I've done in the Game Jam so far. The gameplay and enjoyment ranking was particularly high though, which is why you should definitely go and play the game. Just try not to break the laws of physics. Links in the description, and if you want to check out how I hosted my own game jam, click here.